Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and this is the April meeting of the Bay Area Python Interest Group. Okay, JJ, it's all you.
My application, I have a tree. So everyone knows how a tree is implemented. You have like this node, and he has a list of children that are pointing down like this, and each of these has a list of children that are pointing down like this. And so I want to pass this tree to someone else. I'm sorry, I should preface this by saying this is slightly newbie. Instead of requiring the person who uses the tree to implement recursion all the time, I use Python generators, which are like a great way to hide complicated loop logic or even mildly complicated loop logic inside of a function, so that you could say for node in tree and have that nice looking piece of code automatically iterate over the entire tree. And who wants to see like the Python code to implement that, or is that enough?
Not a snippet. That's not quite enough.
Okay. Okay, here we go. So my tree happens to be a class. So I implement what is called magic iter, apparently. So self with that. If not, len self. Let's return. There's nothing. Otherwise, upcoming. Self, and my tree happens to be a dictionary, so the root of the tree looks like this, where root equals my top, or something like that. So my class is subclass is dictionary, and the key called my top happens to be the top of the tree. And so then I say, while upcoming okay.
Is that a zero in pop?
Yes. So instead of implement, I don't think you could implement a generator recursively, so I have to make it into a loop. And so I'm doing depth first tree traversal using the loop. I have a list here. I throw the top of the tree into the list, and then as long as I have more stuff in the list, I take the node out of the front of the list. I yield it, so it goes back into the caller as node, and then I say the new list upcoming is equal to node.children, so all of this node's children plus what was in upcoming originally.
Would you move the board a little forward?
Sure.
It's not, or the podium back, whatever.
Podium back or forward.
Oh, come.
So, is that good? Any questions? Sorry, it's not readable.
Children?
Oh.
Children is always a list.
Yes, children is always a list.
Also.
Okay. So, use generators to hide your loop logic.
So only the top of your tree is the dictionary?
No, the whole thing's sorry. It's more like I'm implementing a tree by having a single dictionary where each key is equal to like a node, and a node has .children, where the children are in the form of IDs. So it's a great way of having a tree that's like, I stole this. This is how Mozilla worked internally. And so really your tree is in a single dictionary. Each of the keys are these IDs, they're strings, and nodes have .children, which are a list of IDs that loop back into the dictionary.
Why is root a code string by default?
Because the keys in the dictionary are strings.
Oh, okay.
So it turns out that, like, I'm sorry, like, I didn't want to like bore you with these details, but it turns out I'm working on RDF, and so the keys are RDF IDs, which are strings. And so I have one dictionary that's for my entire tree, where each key is the RDF ID, and each value is a node, which is actually a dictionary of attributes.
So you have a list of IDs in addition to having.
Yeah, so node.children is like a list of ID. .children is actually like, I just made a property that actually grabs the IDs out of the dictionary.
So it's like subkey, dot keys.
Yeah. Yes. It's .children is actually implemented as a property that gets like NC children like 1 or something. It's like RDF stuff. Like, it's not really all that interesting. Like, the interesting thing is.
Yeah, no, that's.
Yeah. Okay.
So what are the values in the dictionary?
Nodes, which are a subclass of dict.
Oh, okay. So they are a dictionary themselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else?
The only problem that I have with Python over
Normal functional language.
Oh, there we go.
is that, or even other imperative languages, is that there's no just scope that you can create that isn't anything. Like, for instance, sometimes you want to compute a value, but that a value requires, you know, a large amount of arithmetic, and you want to break it down into smaller pieces. Like, the first piece is there's some logical name you might want to associate it with. Like, if you're doing vector arithmetic, you want to talk about, this is how I calculate this first part, this is how I calculate that first part, and break it down into pieces instead of writing 1 equals giant thing, right? Oftentimes then what you do then is you create more variables above it that do sort of intermediate calculations, and then the final calculation in terms of those intermediate variables. Does that make sense? Like, does that make sense? Does anyone have that? Okay. But the problem with that is it's not obvious that you're associating these intermediate variables with this one-time calculation that's happening, because now you've introduced into the scope all these local variables that somebody coming to your code is like, well, what is blah, 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 what is blah, blah, blah? Really, it's just needed for one calculation. And some languages, you can actually introduce a scope within a scope that does nothing more than contain your code. So I wanted to do something similar to that so I could break down bigger calculations into a more readable and more organized fashion. And in a functional language, this is usually achieved with the let statement, or with. Is anyone familiar with those? They're very, very useful, and you can implement them pseudo-like in Python in a way that makes your code very nice when you're trying to do calculations that need to be broken down into several pieces, and then it be obvious where the associations are happening. So here is the snippet in all its great glory. Here comes the magic.
What does that say? Star star.
Star star KWDS. Sorry, my handwriting is terrible. Which is why I probably should go over there. Alright, so here I'm going to implement it real quick. Class let define init self start our keywords self.k is keywords, and the last bit of magic, call func return func of self keywords. That's my entire snippet, and you're asking yourself, how is this possibly useful in any way? It does nothing. There's no logic. You just pass it a function, and what you've already passed in terms of the keywords, it passes to the function. Complete transparency that does wonderful things. And if I could get my snippet off the computer, I could actually show. Or could I? I didn't bring it printed out. Yeah. Yes.
What do you call it when passed to the function?
Oh, yeah. That's right. Okay.
That's the problem with typing it.
That's the problem with it not being in front of me that I've already written. Let's see. So
Actually, this one here has an in, not a call.
okay. Oh, that's right. See, I'm already doing it wrong here.
You want me to hold that for you?
Can you hold that for me? There's actually an even nicer way of doing this, but I had forgotten. It's so simple I don't think about it. All right, actually, I'm going to go ahead and just name this in self func return. Wait, yeah, return func star self keywords.
Just K.
Hmm?
Just K.
Oh, God. I'm going to keep failing at this, but all right, one more time. I'll get this right. I'm not dumb. All right, here we go. Oh.
That's good.
Just,
All right.
yeah.
Okay, here we go. There we are.
And
And return.
you're good. There you go.
Awesome. Okay. So, as an example of this, really what inspired me to do this, because I was greatly annoyed by any other alternative way of doing it, because I just had a bunch of variables floating around, I have this function that I needed to implement, LCS algorithm. Anyone familiar with LCS's largest common substring? You got two strings, and you want to find out what the largest substring that is common between the two. I won't give you the whole algorithm, but I'll give you the first function, because there's this great example of exactly what I'm talking about, using this let to make your code nice. All right. In fact, I'm just going to be ... Some stuff happens here, trust me. All right. Oh, there we go. Oh.
Yeah, sorry.
All right. Let's just say somewhere in my code I'm trying to do this. Except this left here is kind of hard to calculate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go let right to left LCS table. And I'll explain this once I get it typed. Slash in left half, right, first row of, at first this is going to be, I promise this will make sense when I get to it. All right, LCS table.
It's going and going.
Oh, it's going?
That's all right.
All right, let me give it another little line here. Plus. Yeah, this was even worse before I did this. So if you're afraid, you would be terrified. All right, actually it's 1. But once I explain it, it's very cool. In my geekish appreciation of it anyways. N, I think it's the last one there. Yeah, lambda of right to left. You can tell that I really wish I were programming in Scheme sometimes. Oh, that's another snippet I'll show, but I implemented match. Oh, turned off. All right. Table. Mm-hmm. All right. Actually, that's... There's no way I should have done it in the other order because this isn't going to make sense, but I'll skim over it and just talk about what let did for me. Why I am a happy customer. Minus. Okay. 2, 3. There we are. So, to explain this giant thing right here, why let is so nice is because really left conceptually is this thing down here. It's if I have the right to left LCS table, then I take the far bound of it, and if the head of it is -1, then left is -1. Otherwise, it's where it was -1. So this part of my calculation is if I've got an LCS table that describes where the largest common strings, I want to get the left side of it. But this is actually much bigger because to determine what a right to left LCS table is this thing right here. And so as a reader, you're looking at it and you're going, oh, left is equal to, well, we need to know what right to left LCS table is to be able to determine what the actual calculation is. If you're interested in just knowing, assume some magic happens to determine this, you can go straight here in, and here's the calculation. But you want to know the details of this without it being, because imagine this expanding that, it becomes even larger. But this is even shorter because then you can go back and say, well, what is right to left LCS table? Well, it's equal to, and there's actually a recursive definition here. Well, to determine that if we have the left half in the first row, we know it's this thing. Well, how do we get the left half in the first row? It's this left. And what I was able to do basically is organize these subcalculations in this way that when you're looking at it, it's very obvious what's happening. Well, to me, maybe other people would like to chime in if they... Because actually I'm trying to find ways to make this look nicer, but this is as best as I've come up with thus far. And so you can say, you know, I'm really just interested in left, so you go to the bottom end to find out what it is. And you don't have to even really know what's going on here. The other nice thing is that normally all these intermediate calculations would be this big list of setting variables. And I'd have to start here. The most deep in definition, I'd have to first say first row equals blah, and you'd look at that and say, what's the point of that? And then I'd have another one to be for left half equals blah, and you'd be like, what's that for? And then suddenly I'd have the right to left LCS table equals this thing, and so on. And I just have this list of equals, and you'd wonder what they're used for. But here, they're all encapsulated within this scope. You don't really have to know any of this inner detail. All you really need to know is that left becomes this. And that's the important calculation that's happening here. It's not quite enough that you want to wrap it in a function, because if you need left in several places, you only want to do the calculation once. Because you could imagine, oh, well, if this is a complex formula, why not throw it into a function? Because it really isn't a function. Oftentimes within a function, I mean, this is what the function I would want to be does. It's just the calculation is so big that I want to break it down. So it doesn't really justify introducing several new functions to it. Comments?
Let's see if I understand what you're doing. Are you taking all the intermediate values and basically storing those into a dictionary with the code names of your variables or the keys to this dictionary?
Yes.
The values of the pre-computed values, so that the last thing you finish is taking everything that's in the dictionary and calculating the final result and turning it into that variable.
Basically. You can imagine each of these lets being scopes. Or, do you have some? Okay. You can imagine each of these lets being their own little scope. And yes, each of these lets is just storing the keywords, which are these variables that these intermediate calculations that I'm doing. But they only exist within this call here at n. When we pass in this lambda or a function or whatever, then these variable names will make sense exclusively to the scope. And then once it comes out, the garbage collection will pick it up, and you'll be back here. And the important part is, since we organized it this way, some coder who comes on later, if I had left half up in here, and he needed to modify some bottom part of the function, he'd suddenly have this left half variable, and he's like, oh, what's that? Oh, I think I'll append some things at the end. You know, you never know that kind of thing. But here, it's constricted within the scope of this immediate calculation. There's really nothing more to it than basically what you were saying, yes.
Chris?
I got a few comments.
Okay.
First of all, you don't need backslashes if you're inside parentheses, so you could delete all those and it'll make it clearer.
Okay.
And then, oh God, my brain's dying. The next thing is, if you're a functional guy, you're probably hating the fact that Python differentiates expressions and statements. And if that's the case, I have a god-awful hack to make every statement an expression, including function definitions. There was a guy who took this great Python program and he translated it basically to Lisp using a couple of awful hacks, and I could share that with you. And then the last thing I would say is that, or two last things, nested functions are a great way to keep your scopes clean, and then, especially with closures, that's really nice. And then the last thing is that, unless Guido's here to tell me I'm stupid and wrong, Guido purposely went away from the Lisp and functional language notion of deeply nesting things, because he felt that using temporary variables was actually easier for the human brain. And so that's like a matter of language taste, but so be it.
At the risk of opening a diet of worms, what is the double underscore on the bottom line?
Oh, see, that was actually another snippet that I was going to show, and I realize now that I showed it in the wrong order. But it's a variable that does something nice for me for this function match that I wrote.
There's a variable called under.
Yes.
Just curious.
That's all. So oh yeah.
So you said there's something nice that happens here with memory consumption. Can you go over that again?
I don't know that that's necessarily the case. It was more just that the garbage collection picks it up so it falls out of scope. And so if you happen to have a big function and you just need these intermediate values, which for whatever reason would take up a lot of memory, and you can also do this with internal nested functions will also do this, but a scope will force garbage collection to pick it up afterwards once you're done with it, instead of it existing for the entire length of the function. And if you've got something like a generator, for instance, actually, then that generator will keep its closure in memory as long as it's going through. So you can imagine, even if your function's short, but it happens to be a generator, it keeps all those local variables in memory as long as it's doing their big for loop for each of those items. So you can imagine a closure and a scope actually helping with memory in those situations.
Are you on the mailing list?
No. I'm sorry.
I was going to suggest you might post this there in fuller glory.
Okay.
Especially with the thing that it was licensed.
That's what he doesn't want to do.
I understand that this is relatively esoteric, but I happen to just like this formatting of syntax, and I know that maybe other developers disagree, but I was just happy because it's a snippet that if you really like nesting things, which I happen to like doing, and being very specific about your scopes and having all my crazy indentation fun going on, then maybe you might like this, because I thought it was really cute. 4 lines and it does this for me. And that's basically it.
I brought it back.
Oh.
I think I sent this out in February to the mailing list. Basically, Hal Fulton wrote this thing in the Ruby Way. The book is a book about Ruby, where if you have what amounts to a triple quoted string, you can, but it has its own internal indentation, but you want it to be all indented, matching the rest of your Python code. This little 4-line guy does that. It's just a simple regular expression. I see I have the redundant version of it. You can either have this question mark M does the same thing as the M flag, which turns the regular expression into a multi-line thing. So it just matches. Oh, and my weblog poster doubled those backslashes in a place where it doesn't need to. But basically, it matches non-spaces, and then the first, or it matches space, white space, and then the first non-white space character, and then everything else is what ends up getting substituted here. So it just takes it, and at the start of each line, it rips off everything up to the OR bar, and then the R strip, what it does is strips off this last line down here. And so you end up with a string that just consists of the stuff to the right of the OR bars, and can help see what the triple-quoted string looks like. So the second one that I had is what I call my time and date stamps. I'm starting around 2001. I made up a system of giving date stamps to files where it's 2 lowercase letters followed by either digits or an uppercase letter. That way I can just like put stuff, give them this funky, like the FDK is 2006 April, and yes, mid-April of 2006 and so on. So this snippet is code that implements this this date stamp, which I use often, like in debug messages and so on, where I want to know when I put in this message. It'll have just a little three-letter prefix, and I can see which ones I put in most recently fairly easily with this. So the code itself is actually not tricky anywhere. It just starts with years starting at 2001 is A, and then months go A through L, and then the day of the month is the weird one because it's the digits 1 through 9, followed by letters, uppercase letters aligned so that capital Z is the 31st. Which is a little weird, but it makes this particular kind of 3-character string stand out really well. So anytime I see that in any of my stuff, I know, oh, that's a date stamp, and it's just real straightforward. And I guess the last one I have here is slight variation on the flattened, since the email discussion on the mailing list that caused me to get drafted into doing this was about a flatten method for, well, a flatten function for multi-level syntaxes. I took the version of that Alex put in the Python cookbook and made ever so slight tweak in it so that I could have a function named noCanDo. So, I guess that's about it for these.
The indentation one, TextWrap standard library module now has dedent, which will pull out the most white space that's on all the lines in your string. So
cool.
Use a similar way.
And I'll send this URL, well, the actual online URL for that out to the mailing list. So did you want to use this laptop since it's attached?
I had a couple of projects where I had some extended Latin characters like O with an umlaut on it, and I wanted to do searches for it, but my keyboard doesn't have an O and an umlaut, and I could look in the character map tool, but that's a lot of finding, and I really wanted to do, does O equal O with an umlaut? And I came across something online that sort of helped do that, and that's Unicode normalization. The Unicode data library has a normalize function, and there's different kinds of normalization you want to do. But the normalization I wanted was decompose a character into surrogate pairs. So if you've got an O with an umlaut, turn that into an O followed by an umlaut. And then you can turn that into a straight ASCII string and disregard all the non-Latin characters with the non-ASCII characters and do a comparison. So now I'll try and type this in, and it's really, really short. Of course, now I've got to type it in, and it's going to take me a long time. If anybody knows any jokes, tell them now while I'm trying to get this typed in. Two birds sitting on a perch. One says, "Can you smell fish?" Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, so as you can see, that's decomposed into just the Unicode code point, and you can obviously print that. So there's my O with a normalized on it, and the standard library is just it's the Unicode data.
You might want to shrink the window a little bit because it doesn't show that.
Also, if you put it closer to the top of the screen.
Yeah, let's just reshrink the whole thing. How's that for everybody?
Now we can
Okay.
hardly answer my
So it's just called Unicode normalize. Takes two parameters. One is the normalization that you want, and in this case we want NFKD, and then the parameter you want. And my typing ability goes down with the number of people watching increases. Okay. So as you can see, that's decomposed into two characters. The O is obviously displaying, and the other one is escaped because you can't see it. Well, you can see it, so I'll print that out just to be clear. There's no codec on this machine for that. Okay, if you had a Unicode machine like UTF-8 with a corresponding font, you'd see it. But I'm now just going to call the regular encode function and tell it I want ASCII, but I want to ignore anything that doesn't fall in the character set, which of course is ASCII. And you get an O. And that's it.
Okay, so I'm not sure I got this right because I brought two snippets that I need help with that I don't totally understand. So I'm hoping that I get some help. In particular, let's see. I have this line right here. Maybe I should bring up the PDF because it has line numbers. This is what I want help with because I, read Alex and other people say that you shouldn't use exec. It's dangerous. Yeah. And I have to confess I don't totally understand the danger, but also he's also said that there's almost never a time when you can't use instead set atter. And so I have this in my production code, and I made this isn't exactly my production code. This is a whole different application that I made to show, so it's smaller. And I'm hoping that someone can tell me how to do this, or they can tell me that this is the case where you have to use exec. Okay, so here's the line, right here, this exec. Can you see that, or should I raise the PDF? It's too small. Let's raise the PDF. I can't see anything here. If I hit function F4 again, I can see things. All righty. So let me reduce that, and let's look at the PDF. Let's look at the PDF. I saw that thing come up. Do you see it?
Try enter.
Enter? Oh, aren't you smart? I'm so Windows ignorant. I don't live on Windows. Okay. So here, let's make this bigger. All right. So this is what I just showed you. There's the exec call on line 23. Let me show you the whole situation. And, I'd be willing to redo everything if I could find. Like, I was just thinking today, now how would I have done it and see what I'm doing? So all I'm doing is reading a data file, parsing this data file. And here I made this as the data file. No, this is the output. This is the output of the code. The data file looks very similar. I think maybe it's next. Okay. Okay, here's my data file. I wanted to make a really simple data file. And so I think that these are the forwards for a soccer team. And then there is a blank line that does then the midfielders. And then a blank line, and then these are the defenders. And then a blank line, and there's our goalie. And this is the co-ed team with males and females, and this is the number on the shirt. And so I want to parse that. And that's all. That's all I'm doing. Okay, and I just wanted to shoot this by you. That you see that there is a class player with a female player and a male player that inherit from it. And all they do is have some magic strings, just so that I have something to show. Okay, and now we can look at that team thing. And you can see that there are 4 positions: goalie, forward, midfielder, and defender. And first I was able to use set_attr to make a self.goalie, self.forward, etc., each of which is an empty list. Then I made an iterator out of these positions so that I can call iterator next whenever I needed it, which would be when I see an empty line. If not a line, here's an empty line. So here I open that file and I read it and I strip it, and if there's nothing left, then I go on with the next thing in the iterator. If there's, I don't know what to do if I stop iteration, you know, you have to go back to the people who made the data. I don't know what they're doing. So anyway, I read that first character and I know the gender. And which class I instantiate depends on that gender, whether it's going to be a male player or a female player. So I have to decide that here. And that's why I'm calling exec. I also have the plus equals rather than just plain old equals. So there's several things in there that made me want to do an exec that I played maybe a few hours looking for something else to do, and I don't know. I also restructured it as a dictionary, so I had keywords here, and then I could get rid of that part of it. Okay.
Who wants to do it?
Yeah, you're going to tell me?
But I prefer if someone else did it, because I talk too much.
Well, we always like to hear you talk. So if I brought it up in idle, should I type it in and try it? Or you want to do it on the board?
I'll just do it on the board.
Oh, thanks.
Okay. And then everyone else can tell me I'm stupid and how to do it better.
Well, they can't call you stupid because I just couldn't do it, period. Or they could call you stupid,
Okay,
but whatever.
so let's first do the self dot %s.
Yes?
Well, let's first take care of self dot %s. So we do set_attr self, and the % is, you're using this position?
That's right. So it's going to be goalie, forward, midfielder, defender.
This underscore position.
Mm-hmm.
The plus equals is essentially an append.
Is it append?
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to do a getAttr? Thanks. True. Here's my getAttr. Plus equals? You want to do that, or? I don't know what it is.
Dot append.
Dot append?
GetAttr is a...
Append? Okay, and so you want some list, and it's player.%player. So we're going to do a getAttr from the player.
But you could extend by that list of one element, or append just the one element.
Yep. Yeah.
So you don't need an inner bracket. Yeah.
You're right. Thank you. Thank you. We're getting from the player module something called %s_player, where we
Oh, you do it there.
modulo.
I see it.
What are we saying?
We're saying female or male. I did this new form. Is anybody going to kill me
Okay,
for that?
so I might even go.
Which I didn't miss. by the way.
Sex equals female if gender equals else. Somebody's using Python 2.5. I haven't gotten there yet. Okay, so now we have a sex. So there we have the interpolated string, and so now that we've got that attribute, now we're calling it, so we could just go ahead and throw some extra stuff in here and say line of 2%.
Right?
And then
You set that equal to set attr. You still need a set attr in the front as you started to do.
no, because it's the dot append.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
And so the general trick is use get attr, set attrs, and whatever, and to grab stuff from environments which are everything's a dict really in Python. Self's a dict, modules are dicts. If you need something from that happens to be a global variable and you want to grab something out of the global variables because you set like A equals 1, B equals 2, and you want to do magic stuff on those, you could do globals of this and then dot get, A.
Oh, that's a good hint, too.
So
Yeah.
everything's a dictionary in Python, so take advantage of it.
You definitely need the interpolation if you spec the player up in the sex strings to begin with. You have, they call that like player type equals, and you could even
Oh, they
Oh, there you go.
use a dictionary to translate from
Yes.
MF to female player, male player.
Yep, I agree.
My next problem. You guys are solving all my old problems. Thank you. Excellent.
Marilyn's point, she said that, was that exactly that could be used, why is this
Thank you.
Okay,
a good replacement?
so, so of course, if you're in like a web context where you're using data that came in from an untrusted source, that's just, like, it's just good practice to get as far away from invalid exec as possible, just in case you coded it wrong. You don't want people executing code that you're not in control of. So that's one reason. The second reason is all of these are really dictionary lookups, which is way simpler than an actual evaluating of Python code. And so, like, this stuff is just like, well, it's faster, not that I care that much, but it's a far simpler mechanism from the Python perspective. Really, anytime you could get away with just doing dict lookup, it's just better.
This one's going to give you much better error messages when things go wrong,
Yeah.
compared to the exec, which will say error on line 1, and it'll maybe say something about, I don't even know if it'll get into the name, whereas this one will say key error, and if you probably cut this line into a few lines, and it would land on the particular line that was at the key error.
I don't want the phrase Python injection attacks showing up in the news anytime soon.
There's also an issue of scope. I can't recall the example I saw, but there, you can expect there to be a scope in your exec that doesn't actually exist.
Whereas this is in the local scope.
Also, file objects are iterable natively, so you don't have to do indexes.
File objects. The next was not for the file object. It was for my console. So, did I misunderstand?
Those are iterable also.
Yes, and so what would I do instead? Because I didn't want to do it in the loop because it was something else that decided when it was the next iteration. So what are you suggesting? So I thought it was a good example of when you wanted to use the iter. So I want to know if it's not. Because when your iteration doesn't come at loop time or it comes on some decision otherwise.
Maybe wrap it in a generator?
Was that better than an iterator?
Well, that way you could isolate it. No, I'm sorry. No, I'm wrong.
It's just the exact
Yeah.
call that I really thought was, that I knew. And in my opinion, the best reason then to avoid it, because there's no danger of somebody else doing it, but just so that if I have an error, I have a better error statement. That's worth a whole lot to get a good error statement, in my opinion. So I'll use that reason when people ask me why is it not dangerous. Why is it dangerous? And dangerous is a big word. It's a scary word as it's meant to be. Okay, I have one more question. And I'm glad to see Wes here, because actually I'm going to show a snippet from his book. And I got to say, I couldn't get this.
Disclaimer, they outsource the editing.
And his book went right away to the number 1 on my list of recommended books when I teach, by the way. It's a really good book, and it's one now that I already picked up when I want to look for something. And if it's a flaw in the book, it's flaw 1.5. I mean, it's really a great book. For people who, for me. Okay, now, I got to find, not exact, but we want to go up 1. And this is about property, the property decorator. And this is about 2.5, or 2.4 is when you could start doing that @ sign, right? Okay, here's the West no-go. I couldn't make this work. First, let me show you the West one that does work. He talks about this. Oh, I have to do the right. Oh, we really want to do it on the PDF. Hold on. Hit the enter. Hello. Okay, property decorator. And first of all, I'm going to show the snippet. Well, here's a snippet that works without explanation, and then the snippet that I couldn't get to work without explanation, and then I'm going to build up to make it so that people who don't know yet what decorators are with me, because I promised I'd do that to some good friend. Okay, this is the one that doesn't work. What did I call it? This is the one that I could not get to work, and you can see, and I think this is exactly what's in Wesley's book, except maybe I changed it just a little bit, barely modified from page 607. But also, and you see it didn't work, and also on 607, he suggested this idiom for property, and this works like a charm, and I understand it, and so that's good. Okay, and so the issue is that this is the old style, the old syntax for making a property thing happen, or for making any decorator happen. And the new style is the kind with the asterisk on top. And I don't know why, but I dearly like that asterisk on top kind, and I want to use it for property.
For the @ sign.
Excuse me. The @ sign. I'll start with A. Anyway, the @ sign on top. And I really like that, and I want to use it. I think it's correct, you know, some kind of a structural way. Okay, so now I'm going to back up and show what a decorator is, because I know some people don't know and would like to know. And I'm going to first show this function called the time decorator. And you see, I put a function inside of it, although it doesn't have to be. All righty, you just see it. So my decorator is going to be time decorator. We'll come back and look at it more carefully. And let me show you that I use it to decorate a breakfast function, a lunch function, a tea function, and also a dinner function. But on the dinner function, just to show, I did the old syntax, because it's clear what's actually going on. So that's what's good about the old syntax. Here I'm calling time decorator on dinner. Dinner is this little function here. So this function is going into time decorator. Now let's go back and look at time decorator. So that's going to be the name of this function name that went in. And whenever time decorator gets called for that function, it's going to return wrap function. And wrap function is in here. Is everybody familiar with these stars? They went by before. Do you have that, Jim? If you have a 1 asterisk in the signature of your function definition, then if there are any arguments that people give when they call your function, they all get gathered up into a tuple named targs. If you have any keyword arguments, this equals that don't have any other place to go in your function definition, they get all gathered up and put into a dictionary called keyword args, KW-args. This is amazing. To me, this was really wonderful. Okay, so whatever gets called, whatever arguments come in, they're going to get gathered up. This gets everything. And then we're going to unwrap them again and call our original function and return that. But in between, we're going to print it's whatever time it is, time for whatever the name of the function is, whatever you want to have happen when that function gets called. So these decorators are called function wrappers, because whenever your function gets called, instead this gets called. So for breakfast, lunch, tea, and dinner, I'm going to get this output and then the other output. That's what the decorator does for you. You might have logging go on in there. You might have property control, all kinds of things. So here I have it on the breakfast, and just because it's come out of material I teach from, it has all kinds of other things going on in argument lists, ways of using them we don't care about. Okay, so that's what a decorator is, and here's the output. And you can see that, hungry sort that I am, every second, I think I put a second between, I would get this output that's time for breakfast, time for lunch. So just in that way, you can add a whole lot of facility anywhere you want it. I had a student who used it to do profiling. So all he has to do is add his decorator, and he's profiling that. Brilliant student. Oh, okay then. Now that we've got that, we don't care about this. Now we got to go back up to what worked in Wes's book for me. Unless I have a typo, I'm going to be real embarrassed if I had a typo, but if you know me at all, I'm real used to having to be embarrassed.
There's a big errata chunk on this.
Is this part of it?
Massive. That's already been made several months ago.
Oh, well, I don't have it. But flaw or not, it's just so. I think it's very interesting, and I'm really like that you taught me and raised this question for me. Okay, so this is the idiom that is on the internet. You can find it as the idiom for using property. Now, property. Oh, maybe we did want that other thing. I'm sorry.
This is the working one.
I know it's the working one, but we have to explain what property is first, don't we? Which I think is in. So I'm glad you're here and you know what I'm doing. I'm talking about it.
It was just above the working version.
Oh, okay, yeah, but no, we want to see this because everybody doesn't know what, now that we know what decorators are, we have to know that there is now a built-in decorator called property. And the purpose of it is within a class, you want to take control sometimes of a particular attribute in your class, and property allows that. And here is it, where I'm calling property, and my name of my attribute that I want to keep control of is secret. And what you give it is the name of a method that you want to have called when anybody tries to access your secret, whatever that name is. The next comes the method that you want it to use whenever anybody wants to set it. And here when they want to delete it, and if you put in a fourth argument, it's going to be the documentation for that particular one attribute. And so here it is in the simplest kind of form where I'm just keeping this secret word that I initialize when I start. And if somebody asks to get it, I don't tell. If they try to set it, I don't set it, I plus equals it just to be devious. But I do somewhere, I think, let them ask if they know the secret. No more secrets. Whatever. So this allows you to take total control of the attribute within your class. That's the point of property, which is very satisfying. And here it is, where I let people test if they know the secret. Okay. Now then, there are complaints, as this fellow, I can't read your name from here. Zach? Zach, okay. Who, about the fact that it puts a lot of stuff in your namespace, right? And so here's the trick that Wes was talking about and explained very nicely. And this is the one that works for not letting that happen. Clean up the namespace. So my function, my attribute is going to be X. I didn't encrypt it like he did because I didn't want to bring in any issue that didn't matter to us at this moment. Now, X as a method has in it an fget and sget. It's just two of those things. And in the signature of the property, and I think I have it one line up, there it is. The real signature is fget up there equals none, sget, and fdelete. Those are the real names. Those are the keywords. So here, we're going to return locals. And locals then is going to be the dictionary that JJ was telling us about. and it's going to say fget, and then it's going to be equal that code object, and fset's going to equal that code object. So then locals is what's going to come back from this function, x. And so when we unwrap it, we have exactly the dictionary, exactly the keywords that we want to pump into property. So it only has these code objects, and there's nothing in the x gets, all this stuff inside gets blown away because it's not happening anymore. So that cleans up your namespace. And that was the point of this particular idiom. And then I guess the error, and I can understand because this is such new stuff, is that we want to do this. I want to do this. I want to use this syntax where I announce the decoration before what gets decorated. Okay, now, does somebody else besides, because Wes has given a lot of thought, I'm sure, because I guess he's saying that maybe he knew this before. I'm sure he did. I'm sure a lot of people told him. Yes, please.
So there are two problems there. When property gets called there, it's not getting called with an fset argument and fget argument, and it's not even getting called with a dictionary of those arguments. It's getting called with your x function. So your x function is never called here. So the fget and fset are never even created. So that's why this won't go as is. Although
And so
it would be nice if we had something close to it.
it would. So the answer is that for property, you simply can't use that decoration on top? There's nothing?
As you wrote it, but
Yeah.
it would be nice if we had something
To do something on
close to
top.
that.
Right.
The root cause really is that X needs to be executed in order to return the locals dictionary.
Yeah.
That's the big flaw.
And there's no way in this syntax to do that, is there?
I was being overly optimistic.
Yeah, see, that's what I figured. I figured you were ahead of the releases. That's what I figured.
Oh, because this is an inner function. Actually, it should be indented a little bit more.
I should be indented more?
It should be indented into
Do you think, guys, that like if app property took X and it used X with some Python tricks to grab the class and then started adding things to the class, you could probably make it work?
Property took X.
Yeah, well, X is a function. App property is a function wrapper that takes the function X, and using the function X, you could use reflection in order to back your way up to hide X, and using the class hide X, you could probably start adding stuff to the class.
The part where the class gets an attribute X who is assigned a property, that part actually works.
Okay.
It's the arguments to property that I think are not working. That's correct. So what would be nice is if we could replace property with a different thing there, possibly a function that works out,
Yeah,
gets the
I'm
arguments.
saying replace property with a different function wrapper.
Okay, I don't think it would need access to the surrounding class.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
And the other point was that you have def x at the same level as the init magic, and it can't be, it's a subfunction of init.
No.
Oh, it was?
No,
I don't think so.
okay.
Will it work? I mean,
Yeah, you don't want it to be a
Yeah,
well,
so
no, it
another
doesn't
example.
work. But what does work, let me show you the one that works, because then you can see why we're having
you
trouble.
never call x within.
No.
Within the class,
This
as
was
a method of the class.
As a if you add, here it is working, and so this gives us a better concept. And so this is what we want. We want to do away with this syntax and use the old syntax. And here you can see that if you access x, here I'm x equals hide x of 3, that set the initial x in the init. But then when I print h dot x, it's going, even when it set it here from the init, you're going to find it says setting x. So it goes through this f set. Let's look down. Let's look at the output. Starting right away from the first init. All I did was init it with the 3. It says it's setting it. And then when I printed it, it's getting it. So, now, ask me again your question.
My question is how def doesn't have a first argument. It doesn't have a self argument. X doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
That one's not the method, that's just the thing to make get an exec.
That's right.
Oh, I see.
Oh, thank you.
I'd be clear if you keep that X a different name.
Other than X?
No, that's all right.
But you don't want to leak the other name into your namespace. You can quickly replace it.
It's the elegant.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Well, okay then. All right. That was very satisfying for me because I know how to get rid of my exec, and I'll stop beating myself over the head over this one, right, Wes?
Just go down with the errata.
The errata?
Yeah.
Well, is that online somewhere?
Yeah, it's at the book's website.
Oh, well, I didn't look at that. Well, I didn't find a lot. I find it's a really good book. Okay, thank you.
The way we've run newbie nights in the past, long time ago, is that there would be two people up front. One person would be talking about the language, and the other person would be driving with a keyboard and basically giving demonstrations of it. So that's how we did it before in the past. We never really clearly defined a newbie. Actually, we had a different mix of newbies. We had the kind of people that Jim's described, which is a technical professional who already knows how to program but just doesn't know Python. But then we also had some people that brought in, they're teenagers who are taking programming classes in high school. And then you've got people who are adults, but they are in the tech industry, but they're not programmers, such as QA folks or release engineering or technical documentation people or tech support people who don't have a real background in programming. They may have written a couple of scripts, like a shell script or something, a quick one-liner in Perl or something. So we never really addressed. We never really targeted a specific audience. It was just, generally people who are new to Python, regardless of whether or not they were new to programming. So, they've worked pretty well in the past before, so I'm not sure we still need that focus. But all depends on, the audience members that are coming to Newbies Nights are really dependent on all you people out there. Who are you going to be bringing next month? So, depending on, who gets brought, I think we can still have a general discussion on, some of the features. If you are new to programming, yeah, it may be a little bit more difficult to pick up, but if you've seen any kind of coding structure, even if you haven't programmed before, Python's fairly easy to pick up. So that's just what, we've done in the past. So there's a lot of new people here. So, if you guys have better ideas or more specific ideas on how we can approach that, I would be welcome to hearing or entertaining them. And of course, then we have to have volunteers to execute it. I can only say this up here because it's easier for me to talk, because I used to be the one that was just talking. I wasn't the one driving or whatnot. So it's really up to you guys. It depends on what kind of people you're going to bring. So. All right, that's just my comments. I'm not making any suggestions as to how we should run it next month, but just a quick anecdote of how we've done it before in the past.
Does that sound like a good way to run things? What the hell, huh? Okay, we still don't have a focus in terms of discussion. That's left undefined right now. How do we pinpoint some angle? Did I make a metaphor? How do we define a point of view for next month's discussion? Do you have ideas?
Well, just a couple of nights ago, Alex gave a talk on, it was called Python for Programmers, which somewhat dovetails into that, and he published a 50-page PDF file with slides that maybe something to teach some of the people who haven't seen Python before. And we could maybe publish the URL of these.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Is that, are you suggesting that as a structure we can use for next meeting?
It's an idea. I don't want it to structure the whole meeting. I'm just saying if somebody wants a quick overview of Python and they've done programming, that kind of summarizes a lot of key features of the language.
Another thing, it'd be nice if people come up with it language, and show easy stuff, and then showing it done in Python, which would be a compelling thing to people who have to use the lesser languages. And it would give programmers, you know, it would make for an exercise to do and show.
Probably shouldn't say lesser.
Oh, no, I like that.
Equal to or less than?
So when I used to give Python BOFs at OSCON, so the O'Reilly Open Source Convention, back in like 97, 98, 99, 2000, 2001, I used to give a Python BOF, which was a quick what is Python intro. It was a 1-hour discussion. It was always fun to have like a lot of Perl people descend upon you. Fortunately, we had people like, you know, Tim Peters, who is a, you know, pretty much a Perl hacker too, or was, to be able to explain to them, you know, the ways of the good side. But I'm sure there's a lot of Perl experts here too, so you know, that would fit perfectly with what's going on. There's a lot of discussion as well. It's not just, you know, two people standing in front and just talking about Python all that. It's really a discussion of, you know, philosophies, differences, you know, coding semantics, etc. Python people aren't very argumentative. They don't like to get into fights except amongst each other.
That's ridiculous.
There it is.
When I came to a newbies night years and years ago, and I learned some stuff from it. But I myself prefer some structure when I'm trying to learn something. And so I was liking the idea of using Alex's slides, although I haven't seen it yet. But anything is good, you know. Anything is good to generate enthusiasm, getting people together and talking about it. It works.
Right, that's fine. You know, we can take a look at it. If Tony can post the URL to Alex's slides. I used to use a 30-slide thing for the box. Oh.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, yeah, we can take a look at it to decide, you know, which pieces out of his presentation we can use. I also have one that I use for the BOFs, but I'm not sure if I have a current version of it. But it surely can't hurt to look at it. But still, you know, regardless of like slide contents, we should have a direction, you know, you know, to define like not just like features of the language, but why we're showing this feature, or, you know, if you know how to program, you know what an if statement looks like, here's what it looks like in Python, or you know what a loop looks like, here's what a for and a while look like in Python, etc. So yeah, we can definitely take parts of the slide, but it should also be, you know, kind of like transferring, you know, code. You know, Drew was talking about code in one language, code in Python equivalent. I think those are fine, as long as it's a nice blend of useful information. That's probably the most important thing, right? So, anybody else with comments?
Hi, I'm a newbie that came on the wrong night. But I would say I like definitely an introduction to Python, but another big part is actually I would consider as a newbie to go to groups. It's really talented people in this group. And if there's
I think you're sitting next to one of them too.
But yeah, I mean, I would say maybe put a little bit of a social aspect into it too, just as kind of a meet and greet would be.
Yeah, that's Anna's thing. She's definitely Miss Meet and Greet. She was supposed to be here tonight too, along with Alex.
Study for
Oh yeah, she's taking a C++ class. She told me all about it last night.
I've also given you that one. I would definitely second what the other gentleman said, that yeah, you can tell that there's a lot of luminaries in the room, and the social aspects, you know, that would be something that's really cool. Is that highlights, you know, who you guys are, you know, what makes the group interesting, or maybe, you know, some people can just get, you know, like I think that would be
How did both of you gentlemen find out about this meeting?
I've been in Python for about a year, and just, I'm in the Bay Area, and I just kind of followed through the actual Python org site, the users, finally just made it.
Okay. And yourself?
For work, we have a group that all of us do Python, so
Okay, great. Did you have a comment back there?
I'm a third newbie to run back.
Okay.
There's one article by Eric Raymond.
Oh, yeah. That Linux Journal article?
Yeah.
One of the most widely read Linux Journal articles of all time history.
That really inspired me a couple years ago. And concentrate on that's
Anybody else a newbie here? Oh my God. Wow. Okay. I could consider myself a newbie as well. The only difference is I have 10 years of Python experience. But I don't know everything about Python. I don't spend a lot of time digging into the source code.
It's not like you wrote the book.
Exactly. JJ's absolutely correct. I wrote a book. See, that's different. And it's not a Harry Potter book, so that's why I'm not retired. All right, so we've got a lot of good input. So who wants to do it? Who wants to execute Newbie Night next month? I would be glad to help, but actually my voice has been going. I think I've been teaching Python too much because I think there's so many people learning it that I'm finding myself teaching it at least once a week now. So I won't be able to do all of it, but I would definitely be glad to help out. Yeah, sure. Okay, Drew's great. All right. All right, we can also take this offline too. We have a month of discussion on the mailing list if we have to get the full structure done, but I think we can pull it off. So, are there any other comments that people wanted to make? Yes. Oh. And then we're going to do mapping and then random access after that.
Oh. Yes, with it on in sleep mode. So here's hit it again for my. So here's my property 2, which can be used the old way and in the new way, and it does that by taking the first, well, it won't work in all the old ways, but it works in at least these 2 ways, and it's missing the delete and the doc string. I don't know what to say. If you pass one positional argument, which is what happens with the decorator form, it will call that argument, get functions from it, and then use those to make the property. And it doesn't need access to the class. It just returns the property descriptor, and that's magic to me, but it seems to work. And then if you do pass functions by name, so this is not quite compatible with the old property. If you pass the functions by name, I crudely make it work. So with a little more fixing, this could be almost compatible with old property, but it could never, whoops, it could never satisfy the case where you called old property with like that. It would mistake that for the new one, and it would be hard to fix that because this my f set is also callable, so it would actually have to call the setter or do a lot of inspection to guess if it's one of
Maybe it doesn't matter if
these
it has the
cases.
same name.
If what has the same name?
I don't care if you have a new name for property when you're using it as a function wrapper. I don't care if you call it property wrapper.
Oh, I see. So just leave it property 2.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a mostly compatible, assuming it was finished, version of property. I mean, long term, I don't think there's a need for there to be 2 of them, and there actually might be a clever way to reconcile this.
That's a pretty dynamic snippet.
Yeah.
Yeah. A reaction to a different snippet.
You'll have to send that to the mailing list, dude.
All right.
I'll have to put that in 3rd edition. All right. Okay, so running out of time, so I think Jim wants to do mapping. Does anybody want to do mapping? JJ?
Anna gave me her coffee cups. If you bought a coffee cup, come by and pick it up. If you want to buy a coffee cup, I think it's $10, but I don't know how many I have left over, but anyway, that's all.
Anybody else for mapping?
Mapping? Mapping? All right, I have one. Has anybody played with Roundup before? The new version? Or the old version? Both?
I don't know what's old, but
Oh.
not played in a while.
There's like a, someone took it over from Ping and changed it around and made it expandable. He did the original one. Oh, okay. I thought he did the first draft of the code too. All right, anyway. Okay, so I guess I'll just talk to you. Okay. If you know people that want to learn Python, I'm teaching Python again next month, middle of May, so a month from now, pretty much. Just come see me. I have flyers. I think Marilyn's teaching a class this quarter for UC Extension.
It's done.
Oh, it's done.
I guess summer I have one.
Summer?
I
Okay.
think it's a daytime course. I don't remember. I'll let you know.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm also going to start teaching nighttime courses for Foothill College. So if you're close to 280 and well, actually, I'm experimenting this quarter with a class just to see how it goes. I haven't actually done a nighttime course ever since I taught for UC Extension myself, so it's kind of trying to get back into the saddle. But I'm mostly doing it as an experimental way to try and do slightly different things than what I do in my daytime courses. Plus, a lot of people can't make it to the daytime courses because they can't take time off of work. So anyway, so if you know people or have a department at work that need Python training, just come see me. Anybody else? All right, random access, and we'll see you guys next month. Thanks for coming.